How you doing? This is T Hoodie in Japan. Back at it again. Coming here to give you more insight, or at least doing my best to give you more insight. So I want to just get to it because I know my last video was very long, which was about garbage that went over 30 minutes. And because there's a lot of points to be made about this topic, I want to try to be more efficient as possible while trying to be clear. So today we're going to be talking about public transportation, of course, in Japan. Here's a fair warning. There are going to be some points where I'm going to be very passionate about. Very, very passionate about. And it's not exactly on the actual trains and how they work, but it is connected. And I just want to give you a fair warning for those who's sensitive about hearing negative things about Japan. I'm giving you that fair warning that if you are very sensitive, you might want to either skip the video or skip the part where I'm gonna talk about, where I'm gonna be very passionate about what I'm gonna talk about. So let's get started. Now, public transportation. What are we talking about? We're talking about the normal local train system. We're going to be talking about the Shinkansen. We're talking about the buses. We're going to be talking about, I guess we could make a small point about the, I forgot what you call it, the taxis, the cabs, taxis, cabs. I say cabs in Japan. The cabs, the taxis. I'm sorry. This is my New York talking. I'm sorry. This is my New York way of talking. I'm sorry. So let's start talking about the trains, and we're gonna talk about the more local trains first. And let's start by talking about how they work as far as technically how they technically work. We're going to be technical about this, and it's not going to be too technical because I don't know the ins and outs of trains and so on and so forth. And the reason I want to talk about that is because I want to make a point, because a lot of people are under the impression that for somehow Japanese trains are like never late. They're always on time. They're these perfect trains that never delay. And don't get me wrong, they're not a lot more on time than, say, New York trains, than Metro. A lot more. But I think a lot of people overestimate these trains and their capabilities and so on and so forth. So I can't really talk about how every single train system works throughout all the states, but I can talk about New York City. And I believe this would go for most of the United States. In New York City, we mostly use third rails. And that third rail is basically what basically gives the voltage to the trains, have them move the way they need to. That's basically the DC voltage source for the trains to keep them moving. Very old technology and very cheap. That's a negative way to put it. Some might say cost effective, if they wanted to put it nicely. But for the most part, they are sturdy. And when I say sturdy, I'll kind of get to why I say that. When I talk about the Japan infrastructure, the Japan infrastructure basically use we'll just call it a overhead line, and The overhead line kind of speaks for itself. Over the train, there's 2 cable lines. The train connects to it, and the overhead cables basically gives the DC voltage to power up the trains and get them moving. A lot more advanced technology, a lot more costly, and a lot more faster, because they do give out more voltage, allowing these trains to move a lot more faster than, say, the metro trains in New York City. Unless New York, during the 5.5 years, found some new technology to make their rails more faster and efficient. I don't know, but that's not what I heard, because I definitely have family and I'm talking to them often. But anyway, from the surface, these overhead lines, Japanese infrastructure, and it's not just Japanese infrastructure. I'm pretty sure many other countries have them as well, especially in Asian countries. I know South Korea has them, and probably China, and probably other places too. But there are a lot of not a lot, but there is some drawbacks with the overhead line. One drawback is that you need more space, because you need, like, if I'm the train and the whole overhead line's like this here, then you're gonna need to make a lot of extra space for the overhead line cable. So when it comes to mountains or tunnels and stuff like that, you have to be mindful of how you're building the infrastructure in specific areas. But that's not really too much a problem for the riders. The problem for the riders with the overhead lines is during heavy weather. Because let's think about this for a second. Let's use common sense. During heavy weather, we're talking about heavy rain, heavy wind, snow, whatever you want to call it. Which one do you think is going to be more durable? The third rail, which is basically one big long metal bar on the ground, or 2 cables hanging up in the air? Which one do you think is gonna be more resistant towards heavy weather? If you don't know the answer, I'm gonna answer for you. It's gonna be the third rail. So basically, and this is something I and others who live in Japan experience on a regular basis, and this has especially been prevalent because we've been having a lot of heavy weather lately, especially when it comes to rain. It's been raining like crazy. Like, up until this year, I've never seen it rain so heavy as frequently. Yes, usually it does rain frequently, but it never rains so heavy as I've seen it rain here in Japan before. Like, the rain I'm used to in, like, New York City was a lot greater than what I've seen in Japan until this year. So because of that, we've been getting a lot of delays. And why is that? Because, like I said, when you have heavy rain, heavy snow, heavy wind, that causes the cables to blow. It causes the cables to sag. It potentially causes the cable to break. And then what happens? Well, someone's going to have to fix those cables. Trains can't move until those cables are fixed, and it causes huge delay. And those delays could go on for 30, 40 minutes. I've seen it go for 30, 40, 50 minutes just due to some heavy weather, which wouldn't be a problem you was using the third rail in like in say New York City. So that's one issue. But getting off of infrastructure and so on and so forth, even putting that aside, to say that Japan is on time even during its best weather is not true at all. They are late, not late by a lot, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, but they are often late. Not often, I don't want to say often, but they're a lot more often late than what people say it is. I'll keep it at that. And it is what it is. But there's also one misconception that I always had an issue with, and I don't know, maybe it's just me, because when people talk about the trains always being on time, they made this example, and I believe this was like years and years and years ago, where because the train left 2 minutes earlier, and because of that the train company had to apologize. And I think it felt like they was trying to make it say they're so much on time that even if they leave early, they apologize. 2 minutes early, they apologize. And there's a lot more to that. If you live in Japan, whether you're using Google Map or Japan's own app, let's say you want to go somewhere, right? And you want to go at a certain time. And then you look at it, and let's say it says, you look at it and you say, this train, you need to get on this train, and it's going to show this train, and it's going to say, for example, let's say 12:54. Okay? So the reason why I'm going through this is that when you see 12:54, that's not the time the train arrived. That's the time the train departs. Okay? You understand what I'm saying? So people who live in Japan, we look at this and we think that, okay, as long as I'm here on by 11:54, I don't have to wait for the next train. Okay? Now, what often happens is that you make it here before 12, or what, I forgot what I said. What did I say? 11, 12:54. Let's say 12:54. You make it here at 12:54, or a few minutes before 12:54, and then you notice it's 12:54 and the train's not here yet. Maybe you look on the screen and then you see in red. You may not understand the Japanese, but in red it may say like 3 minutes or something like that. So that means the train is going to be 3 minutes late. And that happens. The trains are late sometimes. They're not always on time. But again, 3 minutes is not bad compared to, like I said, what I see in back in New York City. So, but I just want to make it clear that these trains aren't perfect, but they still a lot better than New York City, and that can't be taken away. And probably most trains in the States. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I see it right now. I know someone that I was speaking to, one of my coworkers. He did say that before this certain line branched further into the Kanagawa area. Mind you, it started in Tokyo, and then this line branched out into the Kanagawa area, which is south of Tokyo. Before it branched out, it was a lot more on time, probably way more closer to perfect. But I guess by branching out, there became a lot more delays and so on and so forth. So another thing is, let's talk about cost. Now, before I talk about cost, there's another part that I want to speak about, and that there are different train companies. It's not just one train company controlled by the government, whether it be just the city or the whole Tokyo government controlling the trains. There are several companies, whether it be the JR or the Sotetsu or Blue or Odakyu. There's many different trains, and they have, they go their own routes. They don't try to cross each other. They all go their own routes, and don't really get in the way of each other, really. But the reason why I said that is because, going back to cost, the cost is going to vary. Now, I can't speak for most other countries, not other countries, no, countries too, but most other states. But back in New York, and I'm pretty sure some other cities I've been to back in the States, are usually a flat fee. Japan typically go by distance. The farther you go, the higher the fee is going to be. And depending on how far you travel, that might be a good or bad thing. If you're traveling, like, for example, a whole hour and a half, 2 hours away, that's going to be costly in Japan. Like, often in my job, I have to travel maybe an hour and a half away, hour 45 minutes away, and that could be about 2,000 yen, about $20. Sometimes I had to go even farther than that. Like to out of my prefecture, and a round trip was almost like 4,000 yen, $40 for that day, just a round trip. So yeah, when you're in Japan, especially if you have to travel various places and the place you work is not close, prepare for that. If you're only traveling close proximity areas, then you're probably good. It won't be that bad. But I think for a lot of us, we would probably prefer a flat fee than the by distance fee here in Japan. Another thing I want to talk about is the commute pass, which I don't like at all, because I'm spoiled. I never realized how spoiled I was until I left New York City and went to Japan. So in New York City, and this is changing. Before I left, we had an unlimited pass, and that's basically you purchase one weekly or one monthly, and maybe there's a yearly. I know there was a daily. The daily, weekly, or monthly, those definitely existed. And you buy that, and you could basically go anywhere on the metro in the city, as much as you want, as far as you want. You're good to go. Very, very, very useful, especially if you're traveling long distances and traveling to several places and so on and so forth. I know New York has this new system because they use the IC cards now. That's something I definitely liked about Japan at the time before that. Japan's IC card was super amazing to me, because before we just had the flimsy Metro card that you swipe through, and Japan had this advanced IC card. It looks cool. It was nice design. You could get different company ones, Passmo, Suica. I know there's some other ones, especially if you go down south of Japan, further down south, and at that time we didn't have that. Now after I left, now they have these IC cards, and it's a little bit, even the limited pass is different, where you I believe with the card now the limited is no more, but if you travel, if you use your card a certain amount of times during the week, for the rest of the week, everything else is free. So let's say, I forgot the number, let's say it was like, maybe use your card 10 times already, and it's been the second or third day. Now for the remaining of those 7 days, it's free. You could go anywhere you want in the city, and that's free. I'm not sure which one is better, but I think they're both fair. But anyway, I went off the rails for a little bit. So, but the reason why I talk about this is because the commute pass is not quite like that. Yes, commute pass works like this. You select where you start from and where you're going. So, let's say I'm going to talk about my previous residence, since I don't live nowhere near there anymore. I used to live in the city of Kawasaki, and I was on the Kajigaya line, and I had to travel daily for my job to Shinagawa. And so when I'm setting up the commute pass, I'm having it set up from Kajigaya to Shinagawa, and let's say it's for a month, for the whole month. Now, and then you pay for it. Now, at that point, as long as you're going within that route from however the route takes you from Kajigaya to Shinagawa, or vice versa, everything is free. Now, if you go off route of that, you're paying for it. Anything off route, you're paying for. And I don't quite like that, because it means that if I'm going to, let's say I'm taking a job where it requires me to go to several other places, then the commute pass doesn't work as effectively as the unlimited pass, or even the system my city has now. In the end, I still have to somehow pay out of pocket. So yeah, I don't like that. Fortunately, here's another tidbit that companies in Japan do pay you up for your commute. So at the end of the day, you don't have too much to worry about. But during the time before you get your money, especially if you're not, going directly to one place every day, and you go into several different places, wherever you go, the price and the amount you have to pay for that month could vary, and then you have to wait till the next month to get that money back. But before that, you gotta worry about if you have enough money to commute to where you need to go for that time being, and that could be kind of annoying, because I have to go through that. I don't, for my job, I don't go to just one place. I might have to go to one city that's close by, and then another week I might have to go to the next, and then the next, and so on and so forth. And that's my life. uh, every time. So I don't. Yeah, that's why I don't like the commute pass is like, as long as you're going on this route where you say you're going, then everything's free. Everything after that, you're gonna have to pay for. I don't quite like that. Now I'm just trying to double check to make sure I'm not skipping anything before I go to the part where I am going to be very passionate about. And this, and mind you, we're still on public transportation. Everything else is going to be short, like talking about the other public transportations. This is talking about the local trains. I did talk about the payment, but with the cards, and that goes to everything else. But well, it is what it is. I don't have to talk about that anymore in the future. But let's talk about what I'm more passionate about, and this has nothing to do with the trains and train infrastructure, and more have to do with train train efficacy in Japan. Oh man. So let's start when you're in the train, and in normal hours where there's not a lot of people, it's fine. It's fine. You just think of it as everything is normal. Maybe even better. It's quiet, especially if you prefer peace in your trains, which definitely does not quite exist in New York or other trains in the States, but definitely New York. Then it's fine. It's when, as it get more packed, that you see the true, what's the word? Like, basically, all that stuff where you hear about Japanese being polite and kind and well mannered, that kind of goes out the window as it start getting packed, and especially as you deal with certain trains during rush hour. And there are some things that other YouTubers have spoke about, and there's one part where no one really speak about, and I really don't understand why. And I don't understand why. Is it because they don't commute during rush hour, or what is it? I just don't understand. Maybe in these other countries they do this particular thing that I have a problem with. I don't understand it, but let's get on to it. When it gets more packed and people are standing, one thing you're gonna notice is that, and it's not gonna be something abrupt and people yelling like in the States, but you're gonna see people fighting for seats. And when I mean fighting, they're gonna be power walking to those seats. They're gonna be cutting people off. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who they cutting off. Doesn't matter why. They just do it. And to me, it's very rude, and I don't like it. But that is what it is, because that could also happen in the States too. Priority seats. Priority seats are supposed to be either for the disabled, the pregnant, the elder. You get my point. For those people, a lot of Japanese don't care. A lot of Japanese do not care. There's a lot of times where you see young people or salarymen taking those seats, and they just don't care. To save face, they'll maybe put their head down and pretend they're sleeping while this old person or this pregnant person is right in front of them. But most of the time they're not giving up that seat. And I'm talking about Japanese people. More foreigners are inclined to give up their seats than Japanese people. Like the manners, as we know it, as a Westerner or as an American know it, it doesn't quite exist. And this is like fairly high number of people in a train. I want to talk about rush hour, because rush hour is something that I've had when I was my first year in Japan. I had to deal with rush hour. Me and my wife had to deal with rush hour. Let's take it further. Me and my pregnant wife had to deal with rush hour. Oh, and like I said, my first year I was living in Kawasaki, in Kajigawa, and in Kajigawa, the train that's there is called the Denentoshi line. Kajigawa and Denentoshi line, not far from Tokyo at all. It really honestly takes about 7 minutes to get into Tokyo and 23 minutes to get to Shibuya. Very nice city, close to Tokyo. I definitely miss that area. I definitely miss Kawasaki. I wish I could move there in the future compared to where I'm at now, because I'm a city boy, as you know, because since I'm always talking about New York City. But yeah, so when I was I had to deal with rush hour because I had to go to Shinagawa. I had to transfer. I had to take Kajigawa to Shibuya using the Denentoshi line, and then I had to transfer to the Yamanote line to go to Shinagawa. Now, every time during the week I had to take the Denentoshi line, put aside national holidays. You know, I'm pretty sure many of you seen the footage of the train cars already packed full of people, and Japanese passengers are pushing and squeezing themselves further, making the trains further packed and compressed. I'm pretty sure many of you seen that. Well, during that time, I had to deal with that every single day. Me and my wife had to go deal with that every single day, because we had to we both had our respective jobs in back in Tokyo. Every single day. Now, here's the part that a lot of people don't talk about, and that's what happens while you're in those sardine train cars. And we're not even talking about like the Chikans and stuff like that. We already discussed about how Japanese people are not moving out their seats, even though they're not really supposed to be in those priority seats, and so on and so forth, in the lack of mannerism. What I want to talk about is standing in the cars. Now, you finally managed to get into the car, and you're basically packed like a sardine. Now, based off how people talk about Japan, you would think that most of the Japanese would do everything in their ability to not be in anyone's way, not to touch anyone, so on and so forth. that touching thing. And I'm not just saying like hand touch. I'm just being like, bodies pressed on each other. You would want to do your best. It's already a sardine can. You want to do your best not to further push yourself onto another person. And that does not happen in those trains. First of all, despite many handrails and also the other grabbing things that you hold on to, despite there being plenty, even if not plenty, there's a lot for many of the passengers to hold on to. Japanese do not hold on to them. Majority of the Japanese people do not hold on to those rails. They don't. What they will tend to do is just stand there. And I don't know, and it's usually because either they don't. A lot of the times it's because they're too busy on their phones. They're too busy on their phones. They, for some reason, require two hands. So they like, screw it, I'm just gonna stand here. So what typically happens is, in this sardine can, you have a whole bunch of people who are not holding on to the rails. And then when the train decides to do a certain sharp turn or a certain stop, you get a bit of a domino effect. What I mean by that is that you have a whole bunch of people in the domino effect just leaning on each other. And the person at the end, before they hit a wall or something, has to endure all that weight of a whole bunch of people leaning on each other. Just leaning on each other. You don't know how many times where I'm at the window because there's nowhere else I could be. And then because the train turns a certain way or stops a certain way, I have like 5 or 6 people going at a domino effect and leaning on me. I have 5 or 6 people on me. And that is very frustrating. And it's not like they immediately try to, tilt themselves up, and say sorry. No, it doesn't work like that. They just stay there. They like, it is what it is. I'm just going to stay this little palm piece and lean on this person until the train stops, and then I could catch, more easily catch my balance or whenever. And that's how it's like every single day during rush hour in trains like the Denetoshi line. There was one instance where, and this is another thing I haven't talked about, getting off very, like when it's sardine can packed, and getting off when everyone's getting off of one station like Shibuya or something, everybody just push each other off. They don't wait. They don't wait until, you would think the normal person would, wait till the first people in front walk out. Okay, then, in a good order, just then the next line of people get out, next line of people get out, next line of people get out, so on and so forth. No, everybody is pushing each other out at the same time. Pushing each other out. So what happened at one point in time is, because I like to listen to music all the time when I'm traveling, and for this time I was wearing my earpieces, and sardine packed rush hour day as usual in the Denetoshi line, and it's so packed that I can't even move my arms. And as we're going to the last few stops, I'm noticing that the earpiece, because everybody's moving, and like I said, the lean-in domino effect, that my earpiece is getting loose, and I can't move. Somehow, one of the Japanese men, probably because of a certain jerk in the train, end up hitting me, with his body and his shoulder, and then knocking my earpiece off. I don't know. Now, like I said, sardine packed. I don't know where it is. I don't know where my earpiece is. And you would normally think, a normal person would think, okay, you could just wait until it stop and then you could go find. No, and then you could just, touch the ground and find it. No. Because like I said, once we get off at Shibuya, everybody's pushing each other off. Now, if it's a few people I could push off, fine. But everybody in one manner is pushing each other off. I'm being basically carried out of the train. Even if I was to hold on and stay my ground, within all the people moving out, refusing to wait and allow me to get my earpiece, it was probably crushed by now. I was upset. They wasn't expensive, but the fact that, come on, man, have some manner consideration. Where are you going? Why are you in such a rush? These trains are not late. They arrived on time. What are you doing? Let me get my thing. But no, everybody have to push each other off, and that's normal. It's like robots. They just do what they do, push each other off, and that's that. Sorry about that. Daddy Duty called, but I guess it was good for me to slow down the rambling. But yeah, anyway, my point on that is, if you really want to see the true Japanese, the true side of Japanese as far as their mannerisms and so on and so forth, try doing rush hour. Go through certain trains during rush hour, and then you'll probably get a whole different perspective. But let's end it on that as far as their mannerisms and etiquettes and in trains. So now let's talk about the buses. Buses, I think they're like most other buses. Compared to the trains, they're not very punctual at all. As a matter of fact, they're very often late. Very often late. And that can't be helped. I mean, it's not like, for example, South Korea's, especially in Seoul's, their bus system, where in Seoul they have the buses have their own lane that no other vehicles could travel on, so they don't have to worry about traffic and so on and so forth. So Japan doesn't really have anything like that in most of their roads, so they have to basically be on the same roads as the normal cars. And when there's traffic, of course the bus is going to also be caught in it. So yeah, there's nothing we can really do about that. Payment, like I said, you use the same high-C card, and the payment methods varies depending on the buses. Sometimes they're by distance, sometimes they're a flat fee. Mannerisms, you're not gonna see nothing like what you could see in the trains, especially if the trains is packed. I think the behavior in the trains is a lot. I mean, the behavior in the buses is a lot more better than what I see in the trains. I don't really see people fighting for seats, or buses being so crowded that you're like a sardine, and people leaning on each other and not caring about who they're leaning on, and so on and so forth. You don't really see that on the buses. So, but as you know, they're not as they don't cover as much distance as the train. So Shinkansens, I've only taken it one time to do one round trip, and they're solid. They use overhead rails just like the other Japanese trails, but their overhead rails was much more protected against weather and stuff. So you don't worry too as much about delays with those trains. If you don't know what a Shinkansen is, it's basically the Japanese bullet train. Therefore, when you want to go somewhere in Japan extremely far away at a good amount of time, very efficient, better than almost any other other transportation except taking a plane. I would definitely recommend it. Very smooth ride. Have no complaints at all. Never really tried this food. I heard the food is good, but I never really tried it, to be honest. Didn't go that far where I felt I needed to eat on those Shinkansen trains. Then we'll cover taxis. Taxis are very expensive, so that would always be my last advice to you to take. Only reason I would say you would need a train is because trains and buses, public trains and buses, close early. And like I said, this is especially compared to New York City. Most of the trains are operating 24/7. That's not happening in Japan, so be careful about that. So typically what happens is, like, especially if you're in the nightlife and you party and stuff like that, by 11-12 o'clock it's a wrap. Especially if you're far, it's a wrap. You're either gonna be partying for the rest of the night until about 5 o'clock, or you're going to take a very expensive taxi ride home. And I mean expensive. So, no. It is what it is. I also want to say that I also find that a lot of the drivers could be quite, I don't want to say rude. Rude is not the right word. I find that some people will find it quite rude because they won't speak to you in the same mannerism as they would speak to a normal Japanese person. If like the way they talk to a lot of foreigners is a lot more abrupt and a lot more loose, and that would be good if you was. That wouldn't be much of a problem if you was in your own country, where in Japan, in your own country, where you speaking more loose and less manner and more less politely is seen as more friendly. But when you get that from a Japanese person, and because you know what their mannerisms is like and their way of thinking, then you could find that as rude. So some people will find their way of speaking when to foreigners is rude. But to me, I don't really pay it too much mind. I don't really care, because at the end of the day, I don't really take too many taxis anyway. So, and like I said, it's not that they're really rude. They're not speaking to you any type of way. It's just that it compared to their normal standards of how they would speak to a normal customer. Some might see it the way they speak to a foreigner like me as rude. So yeah, that's basically it about my public transportation. I think I probably went over 40 minutes. Am I going to cut this? I'm probably not. I'll figure it out and see what I want to do with this. But I hope it was insightful. I hope the people watching had enough focus to go through it. I hope you was entertained while going through all this. If not, yeah, it is what it is. We'll try again next time. So, peace out to any people watching this close to the time I put this out or in the future. Hopefully, like I said, you enjoy it. Like and subscribe if you do. If you don't, but I'll try again next time. Peace out.